Most people don't realize how much of their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making millions pulling details about you from public records and the internet, then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might just sell credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/hidden. Protect yourself now at aura.com/hidden.
Live from the back of Ruth the Realtor's car, it's the Stacking Deed Show. I'm Ruth's neighbor and part-time mechanic Doug, broadcasting live from the spacious, luxurious trunk recording studio. On today's show, ever get blindsided by someone you thought you knew? Happened to us too. Today, we're talking due diligence and your investments. Learn how to approach these situations with caution, protecting yourselves while maintaining healthy relationships. In our headlines, Irish banking is struggling. What does that mean for your money? Plus, we'll answer a call to Ruth's rotary phone from Kevin about the best way to buy a house with a group of friends. And speaking of knowledge, or maybe we weren't, I'll pop in later with my property pop quiz. And now, two peeps who enjoy reenacting scenes of Fight Club when they're not podcasting. It's Crystal Hammond and Joe Saul. Say hi. I tried to make like the Crystal and the Joe were the exact same. I've never done that before. How do you like that, Crystal?
I noticed.
Impressive.
I'll see you in Fight Club later. I'm just kidding.
Talking about it.
Hey, yeah, that's right, Crystal. We don't talk about it. And Doug already broke that rule. Immediately right
Yeah,
up the front.
Technically. What a snitch.
Joe's trying to grab the reins and host the show here. We're not letting it.
Doug's got his Fight Night t-shirt on and everything.
Oh, how did I know you'd wear that t-shirt?
Between the bear and the bull. Welcome to another episode of Stacking Deeds, everybody. I'm Joe.
Welcome. I'm Condo Crystal.
And we're having a little bit of an awkward show today, Crystal, because we had a guest on a few shows ago, a guy named Scott Carson, talking about mortgages. And we had some deeders write to us, Crystal, with some information that maybe we should have known.
Well, that's why I love community, because you don't do anything alone. So our community quickly reached out like we found a red flag, and we were so thankful that our listeners looked out, and now we're here.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that. There's a ton of lessons from that, and we will go over what happened on the Scott Carson episode and the fallout from that and really what we learned. But before that, we've got a great headline. So what do you say we get moving, Crystal?
Let's do it.
This feels like when you like get in a fender bender. So you just like try to preempt your parents and come home and immediately start telling them what lessons you learned.
Oh, that's funny.
And you start raking the yard so that they don't yell at you. I feel like we're telling our listeners, our bad. We'll fix it.
That sounds like Cheryl when she's like, why is the kitchen clean when I just got home?
Yes.
Oh,
what went wrong?
What'd you buy?
What'd you do? Right.
Hello, chaps. And now our Stacking Deeds headlines. Cheerio and pip pip.
Our headline today comes to us from Bank of Ireland. See, we're going to get off that topic right away. This is actually from Market Watch, written by Barbara Kohlmeyer. Bank of Ireland stock sinks as provisions for commercial real estate rise. Crystal, we've talked a lot about commercial real estate. Over the past year and a half? Well, here's the next domino, and definitely not the first headline we've done on this, and clearly probably not the last. Bank of Ireland became the latest to flag worries about commercial real estate as it announced higher provisions linked to the sector and saw its shares tumble last Monday. Alongside annual results, Bank of Ireland reported that its underlying net credit impairment charge, that, by the way, means credit that is sketchy at best, by the way. Bank of Ireland shares slumped 11%, now down 21% over the last 52 weeks while we recorded this, probably down a different number when you're listening to this. So check out Bank of Ireland if you're interested in investing in a bank that's shown some weakness.
Oh, goodness.
But Crystal, there's a lot going on here. But I think the biggest thing is that we've talked before about if you're in a city, we talked about a high rise in Cleveland maybe a month ago, that this can affect you. There can be secondary dominoes. But overall, this first set, people sitting right on this, I think are if you own a REIT. And I know different than a lot of real estate shows, we talk about all kinds of real estate, including REITs. So let's talk about that. A REIT is a real estate investment trust where you put your money in, and it's almost like a mutual fund of real estate. You own a collection of a lot of different properties. And so I think that if you own a REIT, you're going to see a big slump like Bank of Ireland shares. But I think that if you own individual properties, while this might affect you if the commercial property is going under in cities where you own stuff, certainly you can afford to hold through any weakness that the real estate sector has.
I was wondering how this would affect our listeners, and you brought up the REITs and the EFTs too, because there are a lot of real estate exchange traded funds. And this is a way for some investors to get into real estate investing without, what is it called? You do with the hammer, swinging a hammer.
Without swinging a hammer. Right.
Or, putting their mortgage or name on the line. A lot of people, this is their path of least resistance to investing. So they go for the REITs and the EFTs, kind of like the stock market. So I could see how if one of the sectors, because even as a government employee, the TSP only has 5 funds, but one of those funds is all international. So that could also affect this too, because who knows how many real estate companies are thrown into the mix in that international fund. So This would be something to look at, what any international funds that you may be invested in, because it's a basket of companies.
But what's interesting about the international stuff is that we're not seeing the same international problems with real estate that we're seeing in the United States.
True.
The United States is the one country at the top of the GDP leaderboard that is largely fought going back to work, doesn't want to go back to work, wants to work from home. We're seeing Japan has gone back to work. Germany's gone back to work. We have seen when you look at real estate around most of the world, commercial buildings back up to full occupancy with no problem. In the US, completely different game. So owning international REITs could also be something where you maybe don't have to worry as much as you do if your REITs are just in the US. This is a problem I have with a lot of investors. Really, truly interesting, Crystal, is that people know on a cursory level what they own. I own a REIT, but they don't know what's inside of it. So I think you bring up a great point that in this case, you really got to know what's inside of just because you own real estate, that could be, there was a REIT back when I was a financial planner that was all assisted living facilities. We talked about it last week with Isabel, right?
Yep.
There was another one that I liked for a while that was all theme parks and entertainment districts that people built. They had entertainment areas, ski towns and ski lodges where they were investing in those types of things. That's going to be completely different than assisted living. Yeah. You're going to have a whole different experience buying those types of real estate. The other thing I want to say about REITs is that if you own a REIT, while you are getting the real estate exposure that you and I like, stocks and real estate over long periods of time have historically done about equally. The North American REIT index and the S&P 500 have come out over 15, 20 years about the same. You really truly don't have a feel for real estate. when you're in a REIT. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's so passive. It's a fund. I put money in it and hey, I've got some real estate exposure, which also makes me a little sad because if you don't know what's going on in the real estate market right now, the lesson that some of these REIT holders are going to learn is, real estate sucks and real estate doesn't suck.
Right.
It's a nice place. If you're looking 1 year out though at your REIT, if I own a REIT inside of my 401k, you know what I'm doing right now, Crystal? I'm buying as many shares as I can. I know this is not going to be clean in 1 year. It's not going to be clean in 2 years, probably not in 3, but in 10 years, in 15 years, I'm going to be there when this up that we can never expect is going to hit. I just got to be super patient for it.
This is like the post-Christmas sale on REITs right now, right?
It totally is. And I got to wait till next November to see the prices go back up. Well, never mind, next August, right?
Plus. Well, and also this is another thing, like the REITs too, that's one of the easiest ways to get in, but that can be, like the least return also. So it is, you're pretty much, it's the stock market, bottom line. So it is different from doing your research, doing your due diligence on, should I buy this property in this area at this price? So that's two totally different, investment avenues.
I'm glad you brought that up because people are wondering right now, Crystal, like, how's real estate like the stock market? Well, these real estate investments are publicly traded, which means that you can buy them on a stock exchange. It's a collection of real estate. You buy an exchange like you buy NVIDIA stock, Microsoft stock, whatever stock you want, you buy it that way. And so you're also getting the fluctuations of the stock market that you won't get if you own a house in Cleveland, where maybe with the Huntington Bank building struggling, that you might see some weakness in Cleveland, but you can buy and hold. Your property's not being revalued every day unless you're looking at Zillow.
Joe and Crystal, just to make sure I understand, let me tell you how I think they work at a super high level and tell me if I'm right or wrong. A REIT is a little bit like a mutual fund, but it focuses on maybe one type of company. So you can get a REIT that is in just commercial real estate, that's retail commercial real estate only, like strip malls, or it'll be a REIT for senior care living, for old people's homes or medical properties. So it's a collection of real estate, but focused on one corner of the real estate market. Am I right so far?
It doesn't have to be. It can be wide.
Totally everything. Okay.
Yeah, you
Which
can
would
own
be more like a true 401k.
That's right.
I don't mean that, but a mutual fund, sorry.
Right. Like, well, no, because there's sector mutual funds too, right?
Okay.
Mutual funds that just buy biotech or mutual funds that just buy just healthcare in general, financial companies, whatever it might be. Speaking of financial companies, if you own stocks, if you own these regional banking stocks, like Bank of Ireland, regional to Ireland, you're going to see some weakness. You'll also see some weakness in commercial real estate. Along with this piece, there's a CNBC interview. Let's listen in to this.
You're not making it easy for us, but you're straightening us out. You're second person today. You're saying it's not a canary in the coal mine, but it's not an isolated incident. So it's somewhere in between. What is that in between place?
Yeah, hedging my bets. No, I think, look, we're expecting to see some losses around office portfolios, especially in some of these larger metro markets where we saw population flows move out of these cities down to other markets, largely the Southeast. And so I think we've been expecting to see some weakness and frankly had been surprised we hadn't seen more of it to date. We just got through bank earnings season and hadn't seen much around credit at all until, these last couple of banks reporting the week hereafter. So, I think that there are clearly some issues. There's some losses to be taken, but we always have to take it within the context of how much capital, how much in reserves that most of these banks have. And even when you look at New York Community, a lot of these, issues around forward earnings and the stock decline had to do with liquidity build and other, necessary capital build from crossing through $100 billion in assets. So as much of a regulatory issue as it was really a credit issue in and of itself.
That's Stephen Scooten from Piper Sandler, who is an analyst on these banking stocks. And what he's saying, Crystal, there is that they expected to see a lot more weakness than they'd seen already in this sector. And they're finally, just this last quarter, beginning to see some banks like Bank of Ireland finally showing some weakness around this area. So it's a little delayed, but they're finally seeing it. And he says we should expect more of that to come. However, that big thing at the end that he said was very, very important, I think, for all of our Dieters. And it's something that Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, also kind of said, which was largely banks are taking this in stride because in the big scheme of things, he talked about the overall capital of the bank versus the size of this problem. Right. Size of this problem isn't anywhere near like 2007, 2008, when banks were just bowled over by this. Yes, banks have a problem. Most banks are seeing it coming, B, can figure out ways to navigate it, and then are largely going to do fine. In fact, Powell went as far as to say in an interview I saw with him that he doesn't expect to see a big bump in bank closures. He doesn't expect to see anything like Silicon Valley Bank like we had early last year. You're not going to see any of that stuff. But that means that it's just going to be a bumpy ride for the REIT market, largely. Going to be a bumpy ride. By the way, one more thing, I like what we heard there from this analyst, but we also have to remember whenever we listen to an analyst, Crystal, that the analyst often is analyzing it because they work for a brokerage house that's trying to get people to buy stuff. And you look at historically the number of stocks listed a buy versus the number of stocks that actually did well. There's a big difference between the two. So a lot of times analysts could be a little rosy. I haven't done my research on Piper Sandler in preparation of this, but whenever you hear an analyst, you partly got to go, okay, what's in it for them?
That was always my understanding. It's like by the time it hits the news, it's too late. Don't try to hop on a trend. Don't try to hurry up and understand something, because if you didn't know that industry or market before, then please don't try to hop on it, understand it, and then lose, because that's when you lose. So that's my thing, is listen to what an analyst says. If that's something I'm familiar with, I'll be like, oh, they're wrong. They're full of crap. Or, you know what? That could be right. And then you can make a decision based on
I think
that.
If you're a long-term investor, like listening to analysts and putting it in your cap along with everything else that you hear about it, I feel like we're getting a much better feeling of the heartbeat a year in of doing this show than we had a year ago. I certainly feel like I do. Much better feeling of the heartbeat of what's going on.
Well, and even going back a year, we're almost at our year mark. Our March Madness episode last year, I think REITs were on the bottom of our top way to reach, so there you go. This is an area that we're like, so that's another good thing.
Could be good. And definitely a great way to go if you're not interested in real estate. But if you're listening to this show, I think you're much more interested in hands-on approach. Coming up next, we're going to dive into recent guest Scott Carson and stuff that came to light after we had Scott on the show. Generally stuff we want to find out, but we have a guest on the show. So a little mea culpa on our part, but also a ton of lessons that you can learn at our expense. And we're excited to share those. But before we get there, Doug, you've got today's property pop quiz.
Hey there, Dieters. I'm Ruth's wrench-wielding repair guru, neighbor Doug. And that headline about the commercial real estate market got me thinking. Other than Jimmy Buffett, I can't think of anyone who's commercialized their existence for profit more than the Osbournes. In fact, it was on this date back in 2002 that the Osbournes first aired. While you may think the star of the show was Ozzy or even Sharon, it was in fact their 6-bedroom, 9-bath Beverly Hills home. They purchased the 10,000 square foot home in 1999 for $6.3 million. Like a second-string college football player, the Osbournes appear to be making their money off their own name, image, and likeness, but they're not doing too badly on their real estate investments either. Just 8 years later, they sold the star of the Osbournes for nearly twice what they paid for it. I'm talking about the house, not Jack. So, that's my trivia question for today. What famous singer and TV reality show personality purchased their Beverly Hills mansion in 2007? I'll be back right after I rearrange the trunk of this town car to make room for the film crew.
Hey there, Dieters. Have you struggled with an insurance company that doesn't understand the challenges of being a landlord?
Did you know that traditional homeowners insurance will not protect you in the event of a claim if you're renting out your house to tenants?
That's why we've partnered with America's best-rated landlord insurance provider, Steadily, to offer you the most comprehensive hand-picked insurance.
We love them because their team of experts understands the rental market inside and out, and they know what it takes to safeguard your investments, minimize risks, and maximize your peace of mind.
You will sleep easy knowing that you and your investments are protected. So make sure you head to stackingdeeds.steadilypartner.com to get a quote today. You can also just go to our homepage, stackingdeeds.net, and then in the top, you'll see a link to head to Steadily just from our website.
Yes, either our website or stackingdeeds.steadilypartner.com.
Hey there, daters. I'm undiscovered reality star and gummy bat head biter, Ruth's mechanic neighbor Doug. On this date back in 2002, the Osbournes became reality TV royalty when they decided to share their bizarre home life with the rest of us. The show became a huge hit, largely because it allowed the rest of us to quietly say to ourselves, okay, I guess my family's doing just fine. The original show only aired for 3 seasons, and the Osbournes sold their famous home in 2007 for $11.5 million to another famous singer and reality star. So who was it? None other than Christina Aguilera. Wait, it just occurred to me. Ozzy made a catchphrase out of yelling, Sharon! Maybe I can make one by yelling, Ruth! Gee, still doesn't even know I'm back here. And now, let's get back to Joe and Crystal.
Well, you're sitting too close to us, Doug. We know you're back here. You remind us every 3 minutes that you're back here.
I mean, I knew that wasn't going to work, so just let them yell.
But she seems to know I'm back here every time she needs a lube job.
And no. Let's dive in, Crystal, to what happened a few episodes ago. So we at FinCon, and even before that, at an event called PodFest, I met Scott Carson. Scott Carson is a guy, for those of you that didn't listen a few episodes ago, who helps people buy mortgages from regional banks, mortgages that are in trouble. He helps people identify which mortgages are the ones that are likely to be able to be rehabbed. And then you buy that mortgage for a deep discount from the bank. The bank wants to get that mortgage off their books, almost like we were talking about with these banks, right? Bank of Ireland trying to get mortgages, these commercial loans that are ugly, off of their balance sheet. Same thing. You buy it from them. They're happy to get rid of it. Get something so that...
Yeah, pennies. Sometimes, it's like pennies on the dollar that they sell them for.
I met him at PodFest. We met him again at FinCon, and we had some great experiences chatting with him, getting to know about him and his spouse, and living in Austin, which is, for me, if you're 6 hours away, you're fairly close.
Yeah, same
living
for me.
fairly close to me, and generally enjoyed getting to know Scott. And so then after looking up, I was worried about note selling and about, I hadn't really heard people talk about it much. And after diving into it and seeing that this is a thing and you can do it, we thought Scott, with the way that he talks, what a great teacher.
Yeah. Explained it great. Cool personality. And I don't know that make it to our March Madness episode.
It did. I don't think it did.
That even, because that wasn't on any of our radars. Yeah, so that's just another way to educate our deeders.
So we have Scott on. We have what you heard, which was a great discussion with Scott. So far, everything is great, but in a way that seems maybe Bernie Madoff great, because we put it out there and then we start getting some emails, and we get an email that shows Scott in an orange jumpsuit being arrested. We get another email that goes over a long thread on the popular Bigger Pockets site about Scott and ripping people off. And actually ripping people off kind of in slow motion, Crystal. Really, people that they went through his academy, they learned what they were doing. They decided to just have Scott invest the money for them, right? And then they put their money with Scott. And then Scott proceeded to do things differently than they expected. He put the property was supposed to be in the investor's name, and instead Scott had it in his name. Scott's attention to communication, not very good. And then when the person got worried about what was going on, Scott kind of put them off. This is all, by the way, just according to the person, not according to Scott. Put them off and was like, yeah, I'll get back with you. I'll get back with you. And finally, after several months, gets in touch with Scott. They have a conversation. They have another quick conversation. Scott shows up at their door finally and gives them partial payment. And it sounds like ultimately Scott made them whole, but not after a bunch of cajoling and a bunch of problems. This brings up, by the way, problem number one. Problem number one is we talked about, Crystal, about syndication. We've had some people on the show that run syndications. Whenever somebody has a syndication, or you're investing specifically with a person, somebody's investing with Scott Carson, your money goes to that person and you are at the whim of their ability to do the thing that they said they were going to do, full stop. We talked about REIT being a boring way to own real estate. REITs are actually, because Crystal, you pointed out they're like a stock, a REIT is overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So you have all kinds of rules on what investors can do, what they can't do, the prospectus. There's so many rules and regulations that in terms of getting ripped off, it's very difficult to get ripped off. And you normally buy them through a brokerage account, which is covered by SPIC insurance. SPIC insurance is an insurance that covers you if your broker rips you off. It doesn't cover you from market fluctuation or the thing going belly up. But if somebody like Scott decided to run away with your money, it turned out in this case, Scott didn't run away with their money. Then we also had pointed out somebody was mad enough at Scott that they made a website all about with how much they disliked Scott.
Yeah. And another thing to point out too was that nobody complained about the course. The course was great. They learned a lot, but that's also another difference too with, okay, I'm going to take a course and I'm going to do this on my own. Or you take a course and you're like, okay, I'm going to give even more money to the course creator and just hand it over and say, yep, you can just do it for me. That's a big difference because I think you're taking a course to do it yourself, get hands-on, like, let me figure it out, let me do it. And so that's where it went south, was when people decided, you know what, let me give Scott more money to do it for me instead of, them saying, you know what, let me get my hands dirty and do it all myself.
I love how you phrase that because they definitely are two different steps.
Yeah.
Taking a course where you learn, going to a seminar where you learn. We've heard people get, ripped off at these seminars, these celebrity seminars.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't get ripped off by going to the seminar. They get ripped off a little bit at the seminar because they find out it's just a sales pitch for you to give them big money, which is then when they get ripped off. Right. So this starts to feel the same to us. And by the way, let's be very clear here. These people the Dieters that sent these to us did not do a ton of research, which is shame on us, Crystal.
Right.
Because we did zero research about Scott. We did a ton of research on note buying.
Nope.
We thought we knew Scott because we had talked to Scott. And you know what? How many times have we talked about that? Just because you think you know somebody doesn't mean you actually know them. Like, I'm sure Bernie Madoff's people are like, we met with him over and over. He seemed great.
Right, yeah.
He seemed
He's a great
fantastic.
bowler.
God, thank God you haven't done your due diligence on me.
Oh, Lord. See?
I remember when American Express, the financial advisor division, made me a spokesperson for the company, made me one of 12 people in the country. And I'm like, I'm the dude you didn't trust with your credit card.
Oh, that's funny.
Like, I was so bad with the credit card. People haven't read my book, have no idea what I'm talking about. But back in the day, I was a nightmare. And then I'm like, really? You want me to speak on behalf? Okay. Yeah, sure. But getting back to this, very simple due diligence. It would not, Crystal, have taken us that long to just go,
True.
Scott Carson, mortgage notes. And now everybody, by the way, is doing this. It's listening to this. They're going back and they're like furiously looking this stuff up.
Yeah, you'll see them.
So there clearly is Do as we tell you to do, not as we did. And by the way, did we learn our lesson? Hell yeah, we did. On the Stacking Benjamin show, we have this whole rigorous process of people getting on. This, Crystal, for you is a second job. For me, it's a second job, right? I mean, I've got job in air quotes because I think we have for a lot of fun doing this. But because it's the second thing we do, we did not. And by the way, that sounds like an excuse. It's not an excuse. It's just what happened.
No. Yeah. Because we do. I love to, like everybody I work with, even especially that I'm doing this construction project with, I Google their name and reviews. And so since this was a person we knew, we didn't Google, his reviews. We just assumed, yeah, he's still around. So, we haven't heard anything bad yet. And so that's where we've dropped the ball of not looking at reviews or background, because the reviews that it pops out too. But all the other people we've had on that we don't have the arm's length transaction with, or well, not arm's length, but mutual friends.
We
always, yeah. We're like, what do you think? What do you think? And then we both, part ways and then do our research, and then we come back with what we found. And so this was a guy where we didn't do that. And then I'm so glad one of our deeders found this information. And then this also goes back to transparency, because this was the other part of it. We went back to Scott and we're like, dude, we need to talk.
Right.
Yeah. So
let's talk about that for a second, because we definitely want to tell all the sides of the story.
Yep.
Scott messaged us back, I'm going to say in 10 minutes.
Yep. Immediately.
Like immediately. And I said, dude, we found out some stuff about you. I think you know exactly what we're talking about. And he went, yep. And then I said to him, I think you need to do a better job of being transparent about that. We would have done things differently had we known. And by the way, shame on me for not doing my due diligence. And while I do think that's partly Scott's fault, not going, hey, there's these things out there. And I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
I do think it's actually more our fault. So I want to be clear about that.
Definitely.
But Scott answered us right away. I said, I'd love to either do another interview or talk. And he said, well, why don't we start off with talk and then we'll decide. And so then he met us a couple days later, very quickly.
Yeah.
And Crystal, he went point by point through every single thing that happened.
Yep.
And I don't know that we need to regurgitate all that today, but let's do say this. The pictures of Scott Carson in orange jumpsuit are from an unrelated, unfortunate incident that could happen to any of us, and has probably happened to a fair number of people in our audience, but it's not related to what the person's using it for online. So was Scott Carson incarcerated? He did have his picture taken in that orange jumpsuit. That is him. What happened around that? I think that's outside of this scope. People can go look it up, but it wasn't used in the way that it actually happened, which I think is unfair to Scott. I mean, like, it's okay to say that Scott was horrible with communication. Scott even said that when we talked to him.
Yeah.
He said he had somebody in charge of communication. He didn't oversee them enough. He took full responsibility, by the way, for the lack of communication. 100% took responsibility for that. Second thing he took responsibility for was the fact that he didn't pay his investors back fast enough. And he even sent us, we already had the list from one of these online sites, but he sent us a list of all the grievances against him. And he also sent us a list of all those people being made whole.
Yeah.
He sent us the entire list. He was willing to go point by point, person by person. And he said, my lawyers were telling me to go bankrupt. People were telling me to go bankrupt, to wipe the slate clean. He's like, I wasn't going to do that. I did not do that. Now, does that mean that I would invest with Scott Carson today? Probably not.
No.
I probably would come down on not. My general feeling, Scott was probably criminally disorganized, is a feeling that I get, was very unorganized. He also, though, and this is to his credit, when you look at the people that had problems with him, it was all in a 2-year time span, which
a while ago.
Much of this overlaps with the entry into COVID and the period just before COVID. And he was struggling to get people's money out. So the bad news is when you communicate poorly, and you're faced with a situation where you have so much trouble getting your money because of the way that COVID laws were working in the world of real estate, and that's a whole different show, that you'll notice there's no complaints against him in the last 3 years. all the complaints were 2017 to 2019.
Yeah. And just going back to the course also, even courses I've taken, this is just me personally, I do stop short of, giving more money to invest. Like, I'm there to learn it, so I'm going to do it myself in my name. And before I'm handing over a larger chunk of money, I am, reviews, background checks, and everything like that. And that's what we want to emphasize for our deeders. It's the due diligence for anyone. It was funny. Going back to one of my other favorite shows, Everybody Loves Raymond, I forget what happened. And the dad was, they were at the house and the dad was like, oh, no, I'm not suing you. I'm suing your insurance. I'm about to get paid. That was funny because it's like, no, don't take this personally. This is just something that, this is X, then Y. This is following my equation for if this happens to me, I don't care who the person is, where I am, I'm suing or, I'm doing this due diligence, and it doesn't have to break your relationship. If someone's worried about you saying, hey, yeah, let's work together, and you can hand them over to a fake person and say, hey, our research department's gonna, we have a checklist that we follow before we work with anybody, before anybody gets our money, this is our process. So yeah, I definitely want to work with you. Great seeing you again. Great hearing from you. But let's keep it personal, business. And if they have a problem with that, then there's your answer. You don't want to do business with that person.
I love the fact that we were able to ask Scott questions. I want to thank him for all the time that he spent with us going over that. It does seem like a bad situation all around that could have been handled, and he admits could have been handled better on his end. It was also a time frame that created that. Maybe communication could have helped. There's another thing here, Crystal. When I was a financial planner, this crap always happened in real estate. It always happened. When we would recommend sometimes investments that were illiquid, I had to tell my client 57,000 times, you're not going to be able to get at this money. You're not going to be able to get at this money. You're not going to be able to get this money. And I would pick up new clients because they were disgusted with their old advisor who hadn't emphasized that. And my take was never that it was, and don't get me wrong, the advisor should be clear about that and should make sure that the person knows, or even the salesperson should be clear the person knows. I think it's your responsibility as the buyer of the investment to know that when you buy freaking real estate, that you can't sell off a bathroom today to get money for your kid's trip to wherever next week. Like, are you kidding me? Yeah. This is real estate's an illiquid investment. And why this stuff always happens around illiquid investments, I think that's also a thing. So
that could be another show too, because a REIT, yes, if you needed to go on a trip, you can sell your REIT and have your money in a couple of days, or the ETFs. But yeah, that's not the case with, a home.
Or even a mortgage note.
Yeah, those are slowly moving pieces.
That piece is frustrating to me. So the whole thing is frustrating. We definitely learned our lesson, but I think there's also a lot of lessons for all of our deeders.
And they always tell celebrities, get in front of the story. Like, if you have something like that, just disclose it, because then, let us make a decision. I tell people I flunked out of college twice, but I still, graduated eventually. But just
yeah, but it was from Ohio State.
That was actually University of Illinois, but yeah, that's another story. But yeah, but just get in front of bad press, which I don't think that's bad press for me, because college was hard.
No, I mean, and
you can't study and go to all the parties,
I talked about all my early money problems in 93, 94,
Yep.
So you can come back from stuff. And will Scott come back from this? I hope so.
Yeah.
I think he will. I still think that Scott in his heart is a good guy. He certainly wouldn't have met with us. He wouldn't have tried to avoid bankruptcy if he wasn't. But still, just a lot going on there that we should have known. Do your due diligence, people.
Yes.
All right. Tons of takeaways right there, but time for us to do a pivot, Crystal. Oh my goodness. Guess what happened?
Voicemail. We have a voicemail.
We actually got a call to Ruth's phone.
You've got mail.
Now, part of it was on our problem because we didn't realize that it was broken.
Yep.
However,
So for all of you who tried to call in when it was broken, try again.
Yeah, we'll try our workaround because the tech department still has it. They haven't sent an email since saying we have tech working on it. So maybe I need to be that person to follow up daily.
Today's question comes to us from Kevin. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
Oh, didn't even know car phones were actually a thing, or that they had voicemails. But hey, got it, so might as well leave a question. So I got a question about how to buy property with a partner. My partner and I are in a long-term relationship and have talked about moving to a new city together in 1 to 2 years. After moving, we'll likely rent for a year, and then we've talked about trying to buy a house hack. It's a high cost of living area, and I'd suspect that we both would need to pitch in for a down payment. For background, I don't want to build an empire. I just like to diversify my assets and only ever expect to own a handful of properties, probably around 5 at the absolute max. So my question is, in our timeline, we're not going to be married by the time we're hopefully buying a house. This leaves some gaps from a legal standpoint, because if we were married and there's some sort of structure for governing what happens if our relationship were to end, or if I was hit by an old sedan filled with 3 adults talking about real estate, for example. My partner asked if I would ever consider buying property with someone I wasn't married to, and for that reason, I instinctually said no. So the question is, what's the best way to structure this? Is an LLC the right way to go, governed with provisions for death, disability, divorce, disagreement, or separation? If so, what else should we consider when we're forming it? Or is that overkill, especially since we're not trying to buy 100 doors or anything? Should one of us just pay rent to the other, for example? Might this be too messy and cause some pain if anything doesn't go according to plan? To make the question a little bit more universal, the same concept can be extended to other groups of people, like a group of friends renting an apartment who want to buy a house together, or a couple of siblings who want to buy an investment or vacation property. The main point being that these groups don't really have any sort of pre-existing legal or regulatory framework in the relationship. Hopefully this makes this more helpful to others, and thanks for your input.
Kevin, Thank you so much for having the diligence to get through the pod page, which is where the home of our show, through their construction nightmare. You made it. You got on the air. Good work.
Thank you.
I definitely have big feelings about this, Crystal. What's your feeling?
Well, I need this information for myself too, because I do see myself and my friends being the fancy version of Golden Girls. And to me, I wouldn't say syndication, but it just sounds like a partnership that you need to have a contract for. Because I know you could everybody can go on the deed, no matter whose name the mortgage is in. Because I know a lot of couples do that. Whoever has the worst credit does not go on the mortgage. Because remember, you separate mortgage from deed. Mortgage is just, the financing piece. Yeah. So I could see a very ironclad, just a partnership agreement. I don't know if it's limited partnership, or I know there's a lot of different ways to go for that. Tenancy in common, joint tenancy, throwing all the buzzwords out there.
So my recommendation, Kevin and Crystal, is don't.
Oh.
Full stop, don't. You see this go wrong enough. Things change. Life happens. You guys decide you want to go different ways on the property. There are so many ways this ends badly. I got a family member right now who got involved in one of these things. I told the family member not to get involved in this specific thing, investing with a friend. This was not somebody they were going to get married to. It's just a friend. They went in together and bought a rental property. And then about 6 months in, one of them, the person that the family member went in with, just couldn't take the heat anymore. Things were going wrong with the contractors. By the way, things always go wrong with the contractors. Things were going wrong they were discovering new problems in the house. Things always, when you buy old houses, things always go wrong when you buy old houses. And the person freaked out. They're like, I want out right now. You don't know what the hell you're doing. Telling my family member, you don't know what the hell you're doing. And all of a sudden they went from being partners to being complete adversaries at each other's throat. And that's what money does to people. And that's what buying a house does to people. And that's what happened. So that is my guideline, is don't, which means my first of all the things you said, Kevin, then my first thing I love is one of you buys the property and the other one pays rent. And then we're very clear about who owns that property and who does not, and who's making the decisions. and who is not. And it's got to be clear to both of you that that's what you're going to do.
Well, I like that. So they could just have like a lease, because I think the more you have each scenario taken care of in a lease, the better. Like, look, this is legal. There's no emotions here.
Well, people can still, I had an attorney friend that I'd recommend business to when I was an advisor, Crystal, and he made a great point. He's like, anybody can get mad and sue anybody for anything. It could be, if I don't like that hat Doug's wearing, which is okay, but it's kind of bright. But if I don't like the hat, I could sue Doug for the hat. Now, would I win anything? No, but I could sue.
No.
Anybody can sue anybody for anything at any time. So does the lease help? Yes, because you're probably going to win the lawsuit with the lease. Does it mean you're going to avoid problems with one person getting pissed at the other one and this huge emotional? No, it doesn't. It doesn't take care of any of that, I don't think.
Yeah, that is true. I would just say that brings up a lot of good points, because I've been in a lot of insignificant fights with roommates. I had one roommate. It was funny. We shared a room together, and for some strange reason, like, we were the best of friends before, but until then, we did not talk, at the end of that. And if you would have told me that on day one when we said, yeah, let's live together, I would have never believed you if you said, after 1 year, you guys are not going to talk and you're never going to speak to each other again. And I don't even know what happened, so I could see something like that going left out of nowhere for no reason. But I think the lease or whatever guiding document that you both agreed to will be the guiding light.
My roommate in college and I got in a fight over milk, Crystal. Milk.
Yeah, pancakes. I got into a fight over pancakes.
Yeah, we had a huge milk meltdown. Turned out my roommate had bought milk twice in a row and I hadn't noticed, and he was getting ready to buy milk for the third time and he flipped out. He was like, I'm not the only one responsible for this kitchen, damn it.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, dude, I'll buy milk twice in a row. I promise. It's going to be okay. Anyway, it's funny. We're still friends today. And I swear, after a couple beers, my roommate always brings this up. He's always like, I still feel like such a dick with the milk thing. I'm like, it's okay, man. It's okay.
But
yeah, I've been there.
Was that after you bought him the beer?
That's right.
Is he only apologizing after you paid for the beer?
I paid for 3 beers. The second way to go, though, Kevin, if you are going to pursue this, the LLC is the way to go. Because with the LLC, Crystal, to your point, you then have a bunch of what happens if we decide to sell the property, here's what's going to happen.
Yep.
Here's how we buy each other out of the LLC. Like, you got to walk through it. But the problem is if it's your first property and you don't have a lot of liquid assets and you can't afford the house on your own credit alone, you could end up in a situation, even with an LLC, where you can't afford to buy the person out. Like, the person's like, nope, the LLC says you got to buy me out. I can't afford to buy you out. What the hell do we do? Well, then we got to liquidate the damn property. We have to liquidate it. And guess what? It might not be the right time to liquidate. It might be a horrible. So again, my filter is don't. And then if you're going to do that, have one person rent from the other. And by the way, if you're going to split the profits later on, that could be a separate agreement that the two of you make, that, hey, when we sell this property, we're going to have that agreement separate, but one person's name is on all the, yeah, still don't like it. But anyway, but then second, the LLC is definitely the way to go.
Okay. Well, yeah, because that's a good thing for, a lot of cohabitators too. That's something good to know. Because I've seen divorces happen too, where the other person ends up getting a roommate or they end up moving, and just, I would say, make sure it's a place that you can afford on your own. But if you're house hacking, that's another cool thing to do.
Did you say that divorces happen when your spouse gets a roommate?
No, haha.
Oh, because
it's if then, or it's
because generally speaking, I think that would cause a rift in a relationship.
Oh, I can only imagine. So
Cheryl comes home and she's like, "I've got this new roommate for us, Fabio."
Or Dr. McDreamy, since she's at the hospital.
Like, wait, hold on a second.
He's a traveling nurse.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, Kevin.
Yes, thanks, Kevin.
if you've got a call for us, how do people navigate the pod page?
Yes. So you head to stackingdeeds.net/voicemail. And then there's a screen that you think you can hit record, but when you hit stop recording, nothing happens. So you have to hit the little microphone that's in the bottom right, and then it'll open up another interface on top of your window that's already open. And then that's the one where you get all the controls and you can record, you can re-record. And I loved Ruth is actually a good driver. So if you're walking, you shouldn't, air quotes, get hit by us in Texarkana, because Ruth is a pretty good driver.
Yeah. The bruises on my back would
like to have a word.
Would argue with your Ruth driving claim.
Well, that's because you sit on top of the tire iron, but that's a whole different thing.
Right. That's on you, Doug. That's on you. But yeah, so that's where you head to stackingdeeds.net/voicemail. And then you can hear yourself live on air. I liked how that sounded.
That's going to do it for today. Man, that was a bunch on today's show.
Yes. And then make sure you subscribe to the show notes too, because you'll get a really cool recap. Head to stackingdeeds.net/show notes.
Delivered directly to your email.
Yes.
Right as the show's going live. Coming up next week, Stephen Andrews is a guy who knows a ton about the basics of real estate investing, going to chat with us about diving into the real estate world. We'll just talk to him on next week's episode.
And there'll be a party because it'll be our first birthday.
Will it be?
It'll be our first birthday. Yeah, next week.
Unbelievable. I can't believe it's been a year. Well, Doug, our last episode of year number 1. What should be on our to-do list today?
So, what should we do based on what we learned today? First, take some advice from us. It doesn't matter how well you think you know a person. If you're investing real money, do real research. Second, worried about regional banks? You should be. While there's an impact if you own individual properties, the more direct hit is going to be felt by real estate investment trust investors. But the big lesson? Turns out you actually need to own real estate to make money off of it. Time to go get me some of that college sports money. Or maybe I bite the head off an animal and then put that on TikTok. Then I'll have a reality show, and then I'll have enough money to get a bunch of cash and buy some real estate. That is the easy way to big money. How did I not think of that before? Thanks to those of you who wrote to us to let us know we should have done more due diligence on our guests. We learned a valuable lesson, and more importantly, we hope you did too.